Hey, everybody, welcome to Why We Huddle. This is our third episode. In our first episode, we took a look at Washington. In our second episode, we talked to Pause Up Podcast about their FIU podcast. Today, we head to the Midwest and one of my favorite Big 12 schools, and we're going to be talking about Kansas State and the Wildcat. Hey guys, welcome to the show. I know that we have Matt, Bob, and Chef. How are you guys doing today?
Fantastic.
Doing well, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Excited to talk some Kansas State. For those that don't know, I've had family go to Kansas State, and my grandfather's from Kansas State or from Kansas, and was a big K-State fan. So for me, this is a kind of special one. So I can't wait for you guys to help me learn about K-State and all the great things it has to offer.
For sure. I know we're excited to share a little bit about K-State and, why we give up our time on a weekly basis to talk about it all the time in front of our followers. So,
and I've got to say, for Kansas State, you're located in Manhattan. How many people, when they hear Manhattan, if you're telling someone about Kansas State, think it's in New York and get a little confused?
Well, it happens a ton. I mean, it gets the moniker Little Apple for a reason. It's not the Big Apple; it gets the Little Apple moniker. But it's a quaint little spot out in the middle of Kansas. Well, northeast part of Kansas.
Whatever. Especially people from the East Coast, I feel like more often than not, if you say Manhattan, they immediately think New York City. And so I always have to make the distinction of Manhattan, Kansas, depending on the audience. If I'm talking to someone from Kansas, Nebraska, surrounding states, usually they have an idea, but East Coasters and maybe even like LA, California people, West Coast, sometimes it's a little harder. You have to add the distinction.
So most of the college football world then really needs that distinction, unfortunately.
That's
so. So I've got to ask, I mean, as we dive into Kansas, for those that don't know, tell us a little bit about the playing field, the stadium for Kansas State located in Manhattan.
Yeah. So we've got a pretty cool setup, at least from a stadium and an atmosphere perspective. So football stadium is just north of campus. It's within walking distance for most students, I would say. We hold about 50,000 people in our stadium. There's definitely some room for standing room as well, but we've got a really cool setup from a tailgate perspective. Tailgating is probably almost as important as the game. I would say fans go out 4 or 5 hours in advance, and we're tailgating all afternoon or even in the morning for our 11 a.m. kicks. They're out at 6 a.m. Drinking a lot and just enjoying each other's company, of course, before the game. Our stadium is Bill Snyder Family Stadium, which is named after I would say, legendary head coach, Bill Snyder, who basically rebuilt this program from the ground up. It was one of the worst college football programs in history in the late 80s. And he came in from Iowa and just transformed the program. At one point, we were number one in the nation in 1998 and in 2012. Two seasons that will also live in infamy for us as ones that almost got away from a national championship perspective. But Bill Snyder was the architect for the program. He had 2 stints here. So the stadium rightfully is named after him. There's a statue out front and whatnot. So, but the stadium is awesome. I think from a Big 12 perspective, one thing that you're going to find with a lot of our schools is the atmosphere of the stadium and the stadium itself are really top notch. And I'll say it in a way that, there's a lot of stadiums that have 90, 100,000, 90, 100,000 seats. The atmosphere for some of those stadiums doesn't fit.
Cough, cough, UT.
Yeah, I was going to say Texas, but for 50,000, I mean, some of the loudest moments that I've had watching sports are in that size of stadium. So we're very fortunate. I wouldn't give it up for anything because it's truly a magical place.
And so I've got to say, before the game, you talked about they come out, lots of drinking, tailgating, almost as important as the game. Are there any pregame traditions that Kansas State has?
Well, the team always walks in and the band kind of plays while they're walking in. That's one thing, and it's kind of more so for the kids in the community, I feel like. And most of the people who are tailgating don't make a point to go see that, but it's a really cool opportunity for kids to kind of like shake hands or high five some of the players as they're walking in. Another thing, and this is maybe more so just how K-State operates in general, but anytime we have an away game and a big away game win, whenever the team lands in Manhattan and then makes their way back to the football complex, the band is always there ready for them at the football complex and playing the fight song and stuff. It's a really cool that the band and the community and everything really rallies around the team. And it's not just the football team. It's the basketball team, men's and women's. It's the volleyball team in our new volleyball arena. It's women's soccer. It's a lot of other sports. So K-State has a ton of community support, and it runs the town of Manhattan. And the town of Manhattan wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't for the university or the athletics.
Yeah, and it's truly built. The town was really not really built, but it's centered around the football festivities. So the night before, you're out in Aggieville or you're out on points, and the band will come into the bars, the restaurants, and whatever, and play Wabash or whatever throughout the town, basically. And it really does give the moniker family atmosphere, which is why it's Bill Snyder Family Stadium. And it's a truly family atmosphere, and it's throughout the town.
No, that's awesome. I can say there are a lot of great things, speaking from a UF perspective, but nothing like the band showing up, after big wins for multiple sports, or like you said, going out on the town and, just going into bars, playing, getting people really amped up. That's really cool. And I guess now that we've talked a little before the game or whatnot, are there any in-game traditions or pre-game, as in the stadium traditions, like a cheer that you guys do together that lifts everything up? Or is there any songs that you sing during the game? Like, I know, for example, Mizzou has, after the third quarter, they play Mr. Brightside, or Florida, we have We Are the Boys, and Won't Back Down. So is there anything that goes on during the game or even pregame that you guys do special at K-State like that?
Yeah, I would encourage anybody who listens to go on YouTube and type in K-State Wabash Cannonball. That's one of the big kind of traditions or cheers that predominantly is done in the student section during a game, but you'll see, everybody through the stadium will do it at some point. But our band will play the Wabash Cannonball, and our students will kind of go back and forth and clap back and forth. And so when you see everybody kind of doing it, you can see one student's forward, one student's back, and everybody is kind of coordinated that way. It looks awesome in football and basketball, but that's one of our big traditions. I like to include this as a tradition or a point, but from a student section perspective, we're one of, a lot of schools put their students in certain places in the stadium that isn't necessarily good for trying to create an atmosphere, sometimes like in the end zone or things like that. But at K-State, our student section, it starts on the 50-yard line and goes to the end zone. And it's right behind the visiting bench. So that's one cool piece from a K-State perspective. We do that for football. We do that for basketball. We give the students basically the best seats in the house so they can cheer and do the Wabash Cannonball and our fight song and all that type of stuff.
And the backstory with the Wabash Cannonball is very cool too. There was a fire in the place where the band was. Said it was basically the home base for the band. It was a former gymnasium where the basketball team used to play, but it caught fire in 1968 because of an arson that happened due to a Vietnam War protest. Essentially, the only piece of sheet music that was left over was the Wabash Cannonball. The team never really played it at games. There was really no association with that in the university. You'll hear other teams play it too. Texas plays the Wabash Cannonball, I think, at every game that they have as well. But the difference is that was the only piece of sheet music. They had a game the next day or something, and they had to play what they had, and that was the Wabash. So the tradition developed from there. I believe it was 1968 when that happened, and 70, 60 years later, it's still living on today.
And one of the most famous, lore around Kansas State, and we have a very interesting mascot, Willie the Wildcat. And this has been discontinued, but we used to have a very intricate skit, just program. Basically, it would go on forever. Every different opponent had a different skit, and Willie the Wildcat is a very flamboyant kind of mascot, human body, cat head. So it was just a very interesting look to see Willie tackling a Kansas Jayhawk in the middle of the field, or a Nebraska Cornhusker, and those were very. God, I reminisce on those times all the time, but it's been since canceled. But hopefully it'll come back one day.
And I've got to say, you bring up Willie, your mascot. I've said before on my own Twitter that I think Willie is one of my favorite mascots that is in college football. Just being a guy, here I'm in a football uniform, and then there's a mascot head. For me, that's just awesome. And I had to chuckle as you're, talking about him tackling different things. I had to look it up. And that's a few years ago when the band had the Jayhawk and was doing Star Trek and taking them out. For those that don't know what I'm referencing, go ahead and YouTube that. I won't go into a description on on this episode, but it's well worth the YouTube, and there are some interesting freeze frames there. And again, there are things I remember from Kansas State that just make me smile. So, with that said, and hearing some of those different traditions you guys like, I mean, I guess we can go around. Let's start with you. How did you become a fan of Kansas State?
Well, I'm an Army brat by association. I kind of had to follow wherever my parents were, and I was born in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, but uh, shortly after that, we were relocated to Fort Riley, Kansas, and it's not too far. It's a stone's throw away from Manhattan. And I just remember going to games as a little kid, and not really being too interested in football around like 5 or 6. But when I started to get a little bit older, 7, 8, the team is really cooking. And I remember Michael Bishop and just those formative years of really getting into football and kind of seeing what's going on and gaining an interest. The Wildcats were right up my alley. And, we moved away not too long after that, around like the 2001. And it just stuck with me. I still had my K-State stuff when I moved to Virginia, and, I never let it go. So even as an adult man with, small children now, I'm from afar, I'm still rooting for Kansas State. So hopefully I can make that impression on my kids and, just keep the lineage going.
No, that's awesome. And Matt, what about you? What's your K-State story?
Yeah, so I'm a fourth generation K-State Wildcat. My mom's side of the family is all from Kansas. My great grandfather played sports. He played baseball at K-State before going to the major leagues. My grandfather played basketball at K-State. So I just grew up. I grew up around it. That being said, I'm from New York originally, upstate New York. So I truly did go from kind of close to Manhattan, the Big Apple, to the Little Apple, as we talked about before. But never looked back. I mean, I wore K-State stuff growing up. I didn't necessarily know a lot about it other than way back when you wouldn't get games on TV like we do. So with K-State, I would see maybe 2 K-State football games a year. And I mean, basketball was so bad, I never saw K-State basketball. But I just I grew up rooting for K-State, and it was kind of inevitable that I had to go out to Manhattan for it. And I graduated in 2012, and I still, to this day, I mean, I'm up in Manhattan a good portion of my fall Saturdays and occasional Saturdays for basketball. And just never look back.
Awesome. And Bob, what's your K-State story?
Yeah, so my mom went to K-State in the early 80s when the football team was horrible, but the basketball team was cooking with grease, which was always fun hearing stories about games in a Hearn Fieldhouse and Lon Kruger and the good old days. But the basketball team, once they started to get good, obviously in the early 90s, people were paying attention in the state, not just K-Staters, but people who lived in the area who paid attention to athletics would they were like, oh, Bill Snyder, he's really got K-State turning around. My family had purchased East Side boxes through their family business. And so we had that box from 1999 when they built that East Side box up until really it was about 6 or 7 years ago when they kind of got out of it. And the family that's still part of that family business back home still has that box. So we've had that box in one way, shape, or form, really since 1999. So I've been going to games since I was 6 years old, 7 years old. And my earliest memories were playing Nebraska in 2000 in the snow and having that snow game. And it's memories of Jonathan Beasley. It's memories of El Roberson and Michael Bishop. So it's kind of just ingrained in my sports fandom and my identity, and having family members living in the state of Kansas going back 6 generations, it really is rooted and embedded in who I am as a person. So it's been my identity for a long time. It will continue to be my identity. And I love all things K-State.
And you talked about memories. I think that's a good time to really transition. What may be your favorite K-State football memory, whether it's, something on the field or whether it's, especially you guys have talked about K-State being a family affair. And I know you've talked about your box and it being a whole family, 6 generations of Kansas. So for you, what would be one of your favorite K-State memories?
For me, it's the 2011 game against Baylor. And that sounds like a very specific answer, but it's because Baylor was number 15 going into that matchup. And RG3 won the Heisman that year, if you remember. And we beat them 36-35. And Arthur Brown, who was a linebacker at the time and was a 5-star kid from Wichita who went off and played at Miami and then transferred back to K-State. Bill Snyder got him to come back to Kansas, had an interception on RG3. It was RG3's first interception of the season. And it was a shootout. It was an absolutely incredible game. And at that point in time, I was a freshman. I was working in the press box at that point in time in the sports information department with a one Michael Boyk, who Matt Marchesini knows. And that was the last game I worked in the press box because it was so loud when that happened. I was like, I'm sacrificing my time as a student to be up here. I don't want to do that anymore. I need to be in the student section. And by all means, I'm going to spend every single home game in the student section as opposed to working in the press box. So that was probably my favorite memory as a student. And I'll say probably my favorite memory in Bill Snyder Family Stadium for now. Yeah.
Awesome. And you know what? Let's go reverse order. Matt, what would be your favorite K-State memory?
I'm gonna go a little different. My K-State football memory is actually a road game we played against Oklahoma in 2012. It was early on in the season. Oklahoma was a 6th ranked team in the country. We were number 15, and I went down with a few of my fraternity brothers, and we stayed at one of my friends. His friend was playing at Oklahoma at the time. He was a lineman at Oklahoma, and we we stayed in his apartment for the weekend, and I slept in a recliner and whatnot. And the game on Saturday was Saturday night, and it was just such a kind of a back and forth, hotly contested game. We were up 10-6 at the half, and then Oklahoma kind of was able to take the lead. And in the fourth quarter, we were able to score kind of a late touchdown with 8 minutes to go, and we were able to win on the road. And that kind of really cemented us as favorites to win the Big 12 at that time. But it's always incredible to watch your team win on the road. We had a huge group of fans that were there for that game. One of my favorite moments was I was supposed to actually sit in the Oklahoma student section for that game. And I basically won 2 tickets at a bar because I bought 2 Keystone Lights from Keith Stone. And so
He's so smooth.
He's so smooth. Me and my buddy Hazen, we sat kind of closer to the K-State student section, and it was incredible. One of my favorite memories.
Oh yeah, like you said, winning on the road and being there is definitely great for memories. One of my favorite, just to interject on my side that I haven't been able to share yet, is Florida in 2004. We had fired Ron Zook mid-season. He finishes this season as a lame duck coach. We go to Florida State. First time I've ever been to Doak Campbell Stadium, and it's the night they dedicate it to Bobby Bowden, make it Bobby Bowden Field. We end up pulling this improbable upset on the Seminoles. Ron Zook gets carried off the field. In fact, how we had tickets was because a lady that my family sat next to for 30, 40, 50 years at games in Gainesville's like, hey, I have these tickets. I don't think it's a good idea to go. I don't want to watch us go lose. So I ended up being 10th row or something, and it was just an incredible exciting thing. And so, and if something's incredibly exciting, on our drive back that night we were supposed to stay about 2 hours from Tallahassee. I'm from the Orlando area, which is about 3-4 hours away from Tallahassee. We actually miss our turn for our hotel, and like we take a left instead of a right or something, finally end up at a different highway and realize we've gone too far. So we end up not going to the hotel, getting home around 5 a.m. The paper's already out, and I remember that. But it's something that game, that big road win, really just is awesome, and you're not annoyed if something like that happens. If you're like, oh man, now I've got to drive either an hour back the other way or just did 2 hours home. It's like, okay, whatever. We just, pulled a big road win. So you talking about that Oklahoma just brought that up with me. And since I don't really interview myself, I'm like, oh, let me throw it out there and be like, hey, here's a story for you guys from me. But Chef, let's go ahead and get your favorite K-State memory.
Well, seeing how I'm kind of the road warrior, like all the games that I've been to in Manhattan are like, they're usually blowouts and they're not very good, like memorable things. Like they're wins, but actually mine is memorable for a different reason. It's the last time that I saw Bill Snyder coach in person, and that was West Virginia 2018 in Morgantown. And it was a pretty bad loss. We lost 35-6 to a pretty good West Virginia team. But, it's just sad seeing the old man just mosey along the sidelines. And but it was just the end of an era. And as K-State fans, we know like that time was tumultuous because you can't realistically want to fire the greatest coach that's ever coached on your sidelines. We, like Matt said earlier, we have the stadium named after him, the highway named after him. He has a statue. It's kind of hard, but when you're losing games like that, it's just burned into my memory that West Virginia loss, being there and, hearing country roads for that second straight year of them beating us in Morgantown. It was tough. So the last time seeing Bill Snyder coach in person was the one that is burned into my memory banks. Way to bring it down. Sorry.
Oh, well, no, that's fine. I mean, hey, maybe it's just being me, but I've seen the end of the Bowden era essentially. I've seen it. So for me, I understand it, even though that's not my coach. I understand, but it's also a special memory because how many people get to say, hey, at least I got to see some of these legendary coaches coach, even if it is for the last time. It's something that you get to talk to your kids about, or your hopefully your grandkids in the future, and say, hey, I saw this legend Bill Snyder, who the stadium's named after. And that's just something awesome you can pass on. And that's one of the great things about college football, and one of the reasons I had this idea for the shows. We all have different things I think we can relate to, whether it's Kansas State, Florida, Washington, Tennessee, wherever. Is we can all say that we saw something similar. You got to see a legendary coach in Bill Snyder. I never got to see him, but I also got to, fortunately, I've seen Joe Paterno coach several times. I saw Bobby Bowden, I saw Steve Spurrier, Urban Meyer, and you guys have seen, Bob Stoops. You've gotten to see all these that we may never see it. I mean, when you think about, I'm naming all these people that were, 90s to 2000s, we may never see that collection of legends at one time in the state of the game again. So it's kind of weird in a way we think about just these awesome memories that we may not even think, oh my gosh, I got to see it until later on. But I totally understand, and I don't think it necessarily brings us down as much as, for me, it makes me think of how precious it is we get to have these things we can have going forward. And speaking of going forward, whoever wants to step up first, what's perhaps a memory or experience you're hoping to have in the future with K-State? Whether it's, hey, I hope to see them win a Big 12 title in person, or hey, I just want to be able to take my kids from Virginia to Bill Snyder Family Stadium and have that experience of their first game. What are some things you're hoping for in the future? Again, anyone who wants to go first, feel free.
I'm still waiting to get the first game experience with my son, who's less than a year old at this point. We took him when he was 3-4 months old to K-State Houston in Manhattan, and the game ended up just being way too cold for an infant, a very, very small infant, to be there. But either way, I'm looking forward to. I live in Denver. I'm planning to go up to Boulder when K-State plays Colorado in Boulder, welcoming them back into the Big 12, which is going to be super fun, having them back in the fold. Me being able to have him grow up, taking him to away games in Boulder for football, for basketball, is going to be super, super fun. And can we get a Final Four appearance, Coach Tang? I want a Final Four appearance, and I want to be able to travel to it and immerse myself in that experience, because I've never experienced the Final Four, and I don't really want to experience the Final Four unless my team is playing in it, to be perfectly honest with you.
I think for me, it's Final Four is a great answer, and obviously with the family, I feel like this show is very family centric, and obviously I want to take my kids, my little girls, all the way to Manhattan to experience that, because it is, you know, it's so different than anywhere else. Even just anything can't compare to it. It's one of a kind, but realistically, the way our football program is running right now, a home playoff game would be, probably top of the bucket list right now, because obviously Kansas State's never had a national championship, but to even give yourself a chance in football to go to the playoffs, and maybe even have a home game, would be top tier. So that's probably the top of my bucket list.
I mean, I want to win a national championship at something. Women's soccer, volleyball, baseball, track and field. I don't know, just something. I mean, admittingly, we're one of the only a small handful of Power 5 schools that still hasn't won a national championship. And by a handful, I think it's like 2 or 3, something like that too. So just something. I mean, we've had our chances, and there's always something that beats up on us. If it's a mid-major basketball program beating us in the Elite Eight, or Colin Klein getting kind of getting hurt in a TCU game that we win, but we go on the road at Baylor and just tank. It's stuff like that. So, I mean, someday I'd love to be able to watch K-State win a national championship. I don't care in what sport at this point. I'll take anything that we can get, but that's my prayer.
Man, and what's weird is, that's something that I find interesting talking about. You just won a national championship and something, and that's probably something that I'm just admittedly used to, whether it's our track and field team that seems to win one every few years. We've gotten gymnastics. I think we've pretty much won at least one national title in some sport, whether it's track and field, for I think the last 15, 16 years. So it's something I don't even think of. So it's interesting perspective for me to hear from you guys. And you're talking about you're one of two schools with no national titles.
And that's two schools without a national title, I think, in the big three revenue generating sports, and it's us and Virginia Tech. We have won national titles in track and field and some individual events and stuff, but it's we would take anything for men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, or football at this point. Come on.
Are we sure it's not three? Because I think UCF doesn't have one either.
That's a great point.
Because they are Power 5 now.
You just triggered some people in Orlando.
I won't comment on that, mostly because I've not pulled on our Knights College Huddle affiliate yet. So you guys can have that Big 12 debate about does 2017 count or not. And I also have plenty of family, as much as I have them in K-State. I have them in UCF and was an undergrad at UCF myself, although I do have different feelings than many people, and that's all I'll say about that 2017 year. And then I went to UF for law school and grew up a Gator. I just want to throw that before I say I graduated from UCF, and they're like, "Why are you doing a Gators podcast?" Grew up a Gator. But anyways, speaking of podcasts, I've got to ask, tell us about your podcast. It's a 3-man show, and I'm glad all three of you came on at once. First one we've done with multiple people. Granted, this show is still a little bit young, but what can you tell us about your podcast?
It's kind of a funny story when we look back on it. So my handle is at Bob Trollsby. For those of you who don't know, Bob Bowlesby was the former commissioner of the Big 12. And when a lot of the conference realignment stuff was happening, I started doing these live shows on Spotify Green Room, which was the app at the time. And once a week or a couple times a week would have just random people show up and talk. And sometimes we'd have some Texas Tech fans. Sometimes we'd have fans of other teams pop on and just talk shop and talk about what we thought was going to happen. Because at that point in time, it was when USC and UCLA had left for the Big Ten. We had kind of gone through our own tumultuous time as a conference with the previous season, or the previous year, with Texas and OU making the departure for the SEC. So we were all just kind of like, it's crazy right now. Let's talk it out and show some conference unity here. So it was kind of funny how it happened. And then Chef was on, I think, pretty much every time. And I reached out to Chef and was like, should we just do a K-State podcast? Maybe this would be fun to do. And then I reached out to Matt as well. And the three of us got it together. We got it going. And Matt and I have known each other for a long time now, like 12 years now, 13 years now. And so he knows ball, Chef knows ball. I have a background in radio. So I'm like, I can deal it out and dish it out and host the thing, and we'll get it going. But we talk K-State football, we talk K-State men's and women's basketball, and that's really the primary focus. We try to have fun with it too. We like to look back and talk about the 2000 Nebraska game. We like to talk about old players that don't get mentioned that frequently, like what's his name? Matt Boss, I think, came up in a conversation I was listening to today, and Bryce Brown only running for, getting one carry in a game in 20. Like, that's the kind of stuff that we talk about. And it's just guys talking ball. We have fun with it. We drink some beers and enjoy, just talking shop, talking about what we all love. And we like to have guests on from other schools. So during football season, pretty much every preview episode we have, unless we're playing Missouri, we have a guest from the other podcast, from the other school, usually a fan pod, sometimes a journalist. We have them on, and we just want to get a better sense for that school, what they're doing that season, what to look out for in the game, as opposed to, we can speculate, but usually the folks who watch and cover that team and care about that team are the ones who are going to have the most intel on that team. And that's a big reason why we wanted to get joined up with the College Huddle, is being able to have an opportunity to be immediately connected with, instead of sending, seeing if someone's going to reply to a DM on Twitter or an email, being able to have a direct line of communication with fans of other schools who run fan podcasts. College Huddle was a perfect marriage for us in that regard. And so I'm really looking forward to this next football season, knowing that we have a Utah podcast if those two teams are playing each other in the Big 12 championship, knowing that there's an Arizona podcast that I can reach out to for the non-conference game against Arizona early in the football season. So it's super fun doing it. I enjoy doing it with these guys, and it's been a blast. But we're kind of three wacky dudes that just like to talk ball.
And which one of you was the one I saw a screenshot on YouTube? Which one of you was dressed as Fireball, as a bottle of Fireball? Okay, perfect.
One and only Fireball Matt
I
Marches.
don't know. Yeah. I like Fireball. So I bought the costume a couple years ago for homecoming, which revolved around Halloween. Typically our homecoming is late October, and I put it on at a tailgate and never looked back. So I always have it. It's somewhere in this room right now, but I wear it a few times during the year just because I do like Fireball, but I'm not an alcoholic. I will just preface with that.
And do you wear it because you've won or lost? Is there a reason for it? Or you just, today's the day I'm going to wear it?
Today's the day I'm going to wear it. I don't wear it inside the game because I feel like that's a little, I don't feel like explaining to people while I may not be 100% sober while I'm wearing it, but it's just I'll wear it at a tailgate or sometimes on our shows. It's just like a little fun little persona, I guess, that I have.
We do have a lock segment during football season, and the loser each week has to wear a brown paper sack over their head, which is, we just take the spreads for that week. I think we'll do 3 conference games, 1 non-conference game, and 1 just sickos game. So we have a lot of fun with that. And yeah, we just try to enjoy our time as much as possible.
And speaking of your podcast, I know it's been hinted at while we've been talking during the show, but where does everyone live that makes up your podcast?
Yeah, so you can find the podcast at Cocaine Willie, spelled just like Cocaine Willie, but it's Willie with an IE at the end, not a Y, because that can confuse some people. We're on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. Can't forget YouTube. We post all of our episodes to YouTube. And individually, you can find us at Chef Andre Napier for The Good Chef, at Matt Marchesini for Fireball Matt, and at Bob Trollsby for yours truly.
Now, I've got to say, with the name you have, some people might get confused. You're talking about 2018, 2019 Florida State, but that's all I've got to say with that head coach currently, I think, at FIU or FAU. I mean, oh, man, I'm going to get a DM on that. But anyways, Chef, I've got to ask, what is your favorite part of doing the podcast? I don't think we've heard from you yet about the podcast.
Oh, I mean, anytime you can talk about your fandom and, just doing this for fun, you got to jump at the opportunity. So when Bob asked me if I wanted to because I'm always there. And if there's a platform to talk about K-State, I'm going to do it. And when he asked me, it was just a no-brainer. So talking K-State as an adult, being a grown man with a day job and all that stuff, to just have a little free time to talk with my boys about K-State and what's going on. You know, it's not healthy for a fan to not have a way to vent out his emotions about a loss or a big dub or a coaching change or any of that stuff. You got to have an outlet, and just so happens that my outlet is viewed by a random 300 people every week.
It's good therapy. It's good therapy. That's what I like to call it. So
For sure. Sorry, I thought I heard something going on in the room here. I apologize for stepping back for a sec. But yeah, definitely good therapy when we all just let out the good, the bad, the indifferent. And I think that's one of the great things about college football is it brings a bunch of people together from various backgrounds. People that may not even agree on much. We can agree that you got your K-State community or I've got my Gator community, and we may disagree on everything else about the world, but for 3.5 hours on a football Saturday or 2 hours on a basketball Saturday or whatever it may be, it brings us together. And then, like you guys were saying, with the College Huddle, it gives us a direct line to each other, and we get to learn or be able to not random DMs. I can tell you I've sent a few random DMs in the past. Hey, can you pop on my show? Or actually Doghouse Podcast, the Georgia podcast for College Huddle. He asked me on his show last year, and luckily I answered that random DM. Of course, then I got some other messages from dog fans, but hey, that's rivalries. That's fun. And forgot to ask earlier, rivalries. What are some key K-State rivalries?
The first one, I don't know if you want to go around, but the first one for me is KU. It's the main interstate rival. They're nasty squawk people. It can get a little dicey, but for the most part, we kind of stick to our lanes. We run football. They haven't beat us, and they probably never will for probably the next couple decades. And then in basketball, it's kind of tough, but we're closing that gap. And that's the number one rivalry. I think you kind of have to put that one, but they are gross people.
KU is definitely number one. I would say right now, number two is probably different than if you would have polled people 12, 15 years ago. Number two, it's probably Iowa State right now. And Farmageddon is an incredibly vicious and toxic rivalry that was more or less born on the internet and born on message boards and Twitter, which is kind of weird to think about because these teams have been playing each other since 1907. So it's the longest continuously non-interrupted rivalry game in college football FBS, but it's going to get interrupted in 2028 because thanks Brett Yormark for doing that, which is a bummer. But it's weird that these teams historically, if you ask my mother-in-law who went to Iowa State, K-State's not a rival. But if you ask someone who went to school between 2005 and now, K-State's probably their biggest rival outside of Iowa. And for us, our biggest rival outside of KU is probably Iowa State right now. So it's just weird. It's vicious. It's toxic. There's a lot of back and forth between us and Cyclone Larry and some of the other characters on Cyclone Twitter. But and then, 15 years ago, it probably would have been Nebraska.
Or Missouri.
Yeah.
KU and Iowa State are our main two at this point. Conference realignment has definitely shifted the landscape with rivalries and how it works. I mean, Nebraska and Missouri were definitely kind of the two that were with KU from a kind of a hate perspective. And now that you don't play them, we just got done with a home and home with Missouri this past season. But I mean, I grew up not liking Nebraska. I grew up not liking Missouri. And so now I kind of don't care anymore. So we put all the hate towards Kansas and Iowa State at this point.
I've got to ask with Missouri, is it Missouri and KU? With Missouri, is it like the enemy of my enemy is my friend? I'm just curious because I know they really hate KU as well.
No, we hate both of them.
Yeah,
There's really no way around it. They're, I mean, you know, their fan base is like kind of sneaky vile compared, like even to Arkansas. Arkansas's they're
they're just
sneaky,
vicious pig people.
yeah, rabid, nasty people. But Missouri, gross. KU, gross. It's just all there's a lot of nasty people surrounding us.
It's weird because if Mizzou and KU are playing each other in basketball, which has happened a couple times the last couple of seasons, I feel like sometimes I kind of want Mizzou to win because they're like the underdog in that matchup, and sometimes I'm just indifferent. I feel like I'm more indifferent than I am anything else. It's not more. It's not kind of like enemy of my enemy is my friend. I think it's just kind of like I don't know, a triangle of vitriol.
Sounds like Florida Big Three Twitter to me, between Florida, Florida State, and Miami. There's no winning. There's no, hey, we're friends. Although every once in a while, if you got one person that's just totally acting the fool on Twitter, you might get a, rare team up, but that'll quickly fall apart. But definitely. So I guess anything else you guys have to say about K State or your podcast before we get out of here?
I mean, I'm glad you reached out to do this. We have passionate fans in our fan base on social media, or who I see at games. Just kind of just being fans of K State. But I will say, at least the three of us that are here, I mean, we love talking about K State. We truly kind of bleed purple. We believe in what K State brought us, whether attending K State or not. And so it was great being able to just talk about our school, why we're passionate about our school with you, and hopefully, we'll play. Maybe we'll meet up with Florida at some point in the college football playoff, or our non-conference game in basketball. I mean, who knows? So thanks for having us.
Speaking of Keontae Johnson, G League champion last night.
Yeah. I was just about to say. I was just about to ask him what's your favorite connection be if you could think of any. And I obviously just forgot about Keontae until you literally were about to say it, and then I thought of it.
Yeah,
that's like the ultimate. That connects our schools forever.
For sure. I mean, it was unfortunate what happened at Florida. Unfortunately, the rumor is he wasn't going to be cleared at Florida, and you guys gave him a chance to live out his dream. I mean, who doesn't love that story? A guy who literally almost died on the court and then gets to still pursue the game he loves of basketball. Unfortunately, it wasn't for us. It happened in Manhattan, but you guys gave him that opportunity, and that's definitely something worth cheering for. I think our fan bases both can agree with that for sure.
Yeah, and he was second or third leading scorer on that G League team for the Blues. So hopefully he has a good future, and hopefully the Thunder can call him up. But the Thunder are cooking with grease right now too. So who knows what happens with that roster next season.
Yep. A short second connection. You guys gave us Lon Kruger. Lon Kruger got us to our first Final Four, and after that, Lon Kruger, of course, leaves. But we get Billy Donovan. Speaking of, we talked a little bit about some of the all-time legends. There's an all-time basketball legend who maybe we don't get if Kansas State doesn't, give us Lon Kruger, who then, ups the game at Florida to a whole new level to bring in this young guy who ends up being, a great coach. And I'm so happy he's not going to UK for basketball. That is our KU, I guess you could say.
Yeah, Lon Kruger. I would love to know the reasons why he left. There's some various rumors about why that happened, but him being the favorite son and taking over after Jack Hartman left, it was kind of supposed to be, he was supposed to retire at K-State at that point in time and be the coach for 40 years, 30 years at that point, but it didn't shake out that way. He finished his career at OU, but we've got a lot of love for Lon Kruger either way, and he's up in the rafters at Bramlage Coliseum. Incredible coach, legendary player, and I love Lon. So that's another deep cut of a connection. Pulling out the receipts there, Daniel.
Hey, you know, whatever we can bring out here, it's definitely been a fun conversation for me and learning a lot more about a place that I've heard about growing up. One last story before we get out of here. My brother, his in-laws actually live in Manhattan, Kansas, and his father-in-law took him to the stadium. I believe he actually went. I think it was 2017, the Kansas State Kansas game, and uh, they went early in the morning. Somehow got in the stadium well before the game. Whether or not my brother has a pair of Kansas State player gloves, I will not say on a recording. We'll just say that he might have found some in an unattended stadium, but did get to go to that game and said that was the coldest game he's ever been to. Of course, being from Florida, most games are the coldest games if it's anywhere past like 60 something degrees.
That one was a cold game. I had some friends from high school that flew in for that game from New York, and they didn't know that Kansas could get that cold. So there was no preparation whatsoever on their part. So we had to figure out like how to get them coats and things like that. It was wild, but it was very cold for that game.
And it was in October too, so very unseasonably cold.
And that game was like 17-14. It was not a great game at all.
I thought the 2017 game was the 30-20 game.
30-20.
Okay, maybe it was 30-20. Whatever.
Either way, ugly 10.
It's not a good game.
That was the kickoff by DJ Reed after we didn't expect him. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But great game. Love those KU beat downs. It's a good time.
Love it.
Yeah, whichever the home game was, and maybe I'm off by a year. To be honest, I know we got married in 2017, and that's a story for another time about me watching a great Gator victory, running through an airport and running through security while I'm watching the Gators have one of the most improbable wins ever when Kentucky doesn't cover a receiver. So it was lots of fun. Woohoo! And going full circle, that was one of my two previous trips to Vegas, both times 36 hours combined between the two. The other was for Florida's bowl game last year. And we're pre-recording this because I'll be in Vegas next week. So, hey, everything full circle. Look at that. Yeah, except for I'll be there a lot longer than 12, 18 hours. So cool. Alrighty. And again, we can find you everywhere under the podcast at Cocaine Willie. And of course, you, at least a few of you, have your ats for, I believe that's X that you have that we can find you at. I'm not even going to try and say your last name, Matt. I'll be honest, because I have a feeling I'm going to mess that up. Bob Trollsby and Chef. It's Chef Andre Napier is your at.
Yep, Chef Andre Napier on Twitter. Not on Instagram, but that's not important. I mean, I appreciate this, man. This is awesome.
Oh yeah, I've definitely had lots of fun. With that said, everyone, thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.